This is the story of Alya, whose mother died. Alya sent a letter to her deceased mother, hoping that her mother would read and reply. What happens next? The rain fell softly that evening, as though the heavens themselves were mourning. On the porch of a modest house, a little girl sat in silence, clutching a worn-out doll against her chest. Her name was Alya, only 8 years old, yet her eyes carried the weight of 1,000 sorrows. In her trembling hands lay a weathered brown envelope, fragile and frail, as if the paper itself was alive. It was her mother's final letter, a letter written on the edge of life and death, between the world of the living and the eternity that awaited. It was not merely ink on paper. It was love, distilled into words, left behind so that her daughter would never feel truly alone. Since that day of departure, Alya's world had become hollow. The dining table felt too wide, the bed too cold, and every whispered prayer echoed back without answer. Yet, in the midst of emptiness, that letter remained her only flame. She read it again and again, even though every word carved pain anew. One quiet night, under the dim glow of an oil lamp, Alya wrote her reply. The sentences were simple, written by a child's hand, but soaked with longing. She confessed her loneliness, her effort to study hard as promised, and her desperate wish for one more embrace. The next morning, she tied her letter to a balloon and released it into the sky. Her eyes followed as it rose higher and higher, until it disappeared into the horizon. In her heart, she whispered, "Mother, please read this from paradise." That very night, Alya dreamed. She stood in a garden unlike any she had ever seen. White flowers blossomed endlessly, and the sky glowed with the warmth of twilight. There, her mother was waiting, dressed in a flowing white garment, smiling with a gentleness that felt eternal. Alya felt arms around her, warm and real, as if the dream had shattered the barrier between earth and heaven. Within that embrace, a truth sank deep into her heart. Love does not die. It merely changes its dwelling place. A mother's prayer and a child's longing will forever be connected, bound by a bridge unseen, a bridge death could not sever. When Alya awoke, her tears fell quietly, yet unlike before, they no longer carried despair. They carried peace. She realized then that though her mother's body had left this world, her love had never gone. From that day forward, Alya began writing new letters, not for the sky this time, but for herself, reminders to keep living, to stay strong, to become the light her mother had always dreamed she would be. Time unfolded. Alya grew into a gentle yet resilient young woman. In school, she once wrote an essay about someone who changed her life. Her words were brief but piercing. My mother is the sky of my life, unreachable, yet always sheltering. The classroom fell silent as those words were read aloud. Even her teacher could not hold back tears. 10 years passed. Alya now walked the halls of a university, pursuing child psychology. She chose this path with a purpose to help children who had tasted loss, just as she once did. One afternoon, she saw a small child sitting on a park bench, weeping alone. His little shoulders shook, weighed down by grief. Alya sat beside him quietly. She did not overwhelm him with words. Instead, she reached into her wallet and pulled out that old, fading letter, the last one her mother had given her. She placed it gently on his lap and began telling her own story. About loss, about loneliness, about how she had found light in a letter from the sky. The boy's eyes, wet with sorrow, lifted to hers, and in that gaze was something new hope, fragile yet alive. That night, Alya wrote again, not to her mother, not to herself, but to anyone who had ever felt abandoned by life. Her words carried a message. Love does not vanish. It lingers in prayers whispered in the dark, in memories that refuse to fade. And in every step forward we still choose to take. Loss, she realized, is not the end. It is merely the beginning of a journey back to God. And this time, she did not tie the letter to a balloon. She kept it in her journal, for she knew now with certainty. The sky had already answered.